So, there are no changes on page 1. Section 1 is the legislative intent section. Section 2 is amending 10 VSA 6001, which is the definition section of Act 250, and on page 2, as you will recall, there are a few different parts that are being amended, but they're related to the dates. So on page 2, the first amendment is to the road jurisdiction, jurisdictional trigger. The date here is for, it will apply to roads and driveways constructed after December 31st, 2027.
Next, comments about that, I think that is also. We're just talking about page 2, line 4. Right, I think there's this consensus about that. Okay.
Oh, wait.
So that's a year and a half extension.
Yeah,
It's been under the assumption it was a 6-month extension for the end of
this is
'56.
the road rule, right?
Yeah, but there was a 6-month extension, but we can wait to hear from.
This is what the learn.
Okay, it is, okay, this is,
Yeah.
okay.
I thought we, now I'm getting confused because there's so many dates in here. That we had talked about, and maybe this is later in the draft, 2030, January 1, 2030. Okay.
And I should put a note in that because I've been rethinking. There's apparently not as much consensus about 2030 dates. So. Good idea, all right, yeah. All right, there is consensus on this.
So still on page 2, changing the date on the sunset for the priority housing project exemptions. And so that date has also been changed to December 31st, 2027.
And just to know, the lawyer's recommendation was 1 day prior. No, after, 1 day after. It was January 1st, 2020, so I don't think it matters. Unless you, well, we can hear from the lawyer as to what.
Also in this subsection, the prior draft had referenced and had included or the related subdivisions, and then also had this language about areas that have been mapped as downtowns, villages, and growth areas. That language has been removed. However, it is in section 3, so we'll put it there.
And just to make spin a while, this exemption. Once something is designated 1A or 1B, this is exempted, that's exempted. It covers this thing, correct?
So this is the definition of priority housing project currently is tied to designated areas. So it's affordable housing built in the designated areas. Those may or may not line up fully with the tier 1A areas. I don't know.
Okay.
There is an effort on the next page to line them up with those areas. Down at the bottom.
Okay.
So I will get there in a moment, but this is just about the date.
Okay.
So further on this, on the top of page 3, there's additional language that is being proposed here. So this is an exemption for any number of priority housing project units that meet the requirements of this subsection. So on page 3, new language is proposed here. This exemption shall not apply to areas within mapped river corridors and floodplains, except those areas containing pre-existing development and areas suitable for infill development as defined in the flood hazard area and river corridor rule. In a municipality that has adopted flood hazard and river corridor bylaws applicable to the entire municipality that are consistent with the standards established in 10 VSA 755B and 1428A.
No, I know this is not something that we had talked about explicitly, but it was a part of the blurb's recommendations and it was easier to just include it.
So it is consistent with most of the other interim exemptions. So that language as passed in 181 had this saying that you can't have exempt units in the map of recorders.
Less,
Unless,
yes.
yeah.
Okay.
So section 3, is new language to consider, but it's on this topic of priority housing projects. So this is the definition of priority housing project, an Act 250. It's a street project located entirely on a single tract or multiple contiguous tracts of land that consists exclusively of mixed income housing or mixed use, or any combination thereof, and is located entirely within a designated downtown development district, designated new town center, designated growth center, or designated neighborhood development area, or within an area mapped as a downtown center, village area, or planned growth area under 4348, and is not an approved tier 1B area. The municipality must have a regionally approved plan and permanent zoning and subdivision bylaws. So, this is a proposal to update the definition of priority housing project because those old designations are going away.
And we wanted to preserve priority housing projects in places that could be tier 1B, but were not. Had not opted in. Okay, that's.
Yes, it was, I think that's what it's considered, it's one B eligible,
Right.
but they have not opted in. Therefore, housing projects are allowed. And it is still one B eligible.
I think that is the intent. It might need to be slightly more clear,
I think that is the intent.
Yeah.
but
It's,
those are the areas.
it's deemed one B eligible, they haven't opted in, priority housing projects to occur. That's the.
They're still allowed and still exempt from Act 250, but only for that short period of time.
I think
No.
this is in.
This is
This is indefinite, okay.
This is really that, because, yeah, it's deemed one B eligible, they haven't opted in. Still want to build priority housing projects, so,
Yes, and that's relevant to a lot of my town.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so I'll just note that these are two different issues. On page 2, that is the interim exemption for an unlimited number.
Mhm.
There's an existing exemption in Act 250 for a number of units. And there's still some caps in place for priority projects generally.
So this, for the language on page 3, there's still caps that apply.
Yes. So you may want to think about that.
Okay. Okay.
So next on page 4, section 4. Again, this is gonna have the date changes for the interim exemptions. But on page 4 in subdivision 3, the language on line 12 through 16 is unprotected.
Can we go back to page 3? I'm sorry, just trying to wrap my head around this. If this is supposed to be for areas that are one being eligible, but a town doesn't opt out, I think the language on line 19 is confusing, or at least it's confusing to me, because
That's not what it says.
exact.
So here's, but,
Okay.
so, I mean, that's what I think perhaps it could be clarified, so. Those areas listed in lines 17 and 18.
Yeah.
Are areas that are eligible to become tier 1.
In general.
Those are the areas eligible for tier 1.
Okay, those are the areas eligible for tier 1. So
If they have been mapped as such, but are not approved as tier 1A. Or
tier
tier
1B,
they are not eligible, so it doesn't say the word eligible that he was using.
Yeah, cause I mean, I literally have my plan here and a lot of the towns in my area are apparently they have 1B areas in every single town in Addison County. But not all the towns are gonna opt into 1B, but it's been mapped for 1B. So my question is, if it's mapped as 1B in the regional plan that's approved, but they don't opt into it, is priority housing still eligible under this language? Still. Exempt.
That is the intent.
Doesn't say that.
It says it using different words. Because it's an area mapped as,
But it's not approved as tier 1B, what is approved mean?
so, okay, so we can change it.
I'm sorry, Ellen.
I didn't write this, so I don't care.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make it, I didn't write it either, so I'm just trying to make it so I understand it. So.
Is
it
not,
Is not,
Sure.
has not. I mean, because it is what you're suggesting is, right,
Yeah.
so and it has not been. And so that's something like that, and the town has,
Voted to,
the town has, yeah,
yeah, to layer to be.
and the town has not opted into tier 1B.
I think that's almost slang, like, because we don't use that in,
Okay, that's what we keep saying.
Yeah.
That's very. There is a better way to say it, I'm certainly open, municipality.
it's not voted. They have to vote. Come,
The legislative body.
yeah, let's say one.
Means, do you mean the land is not approved here from you? You just get rid of the whole rest of that.
You know, Ellen knows what we're looking for.
well. No, the proposal is not that, it would need both. But, could it be as simple as it's eligible for tier 1B and has not yet been given that status? And maybe, I think it needs more thought that I can't say right now.
Okay,
Okay, right.
all right,
So in order to be eligible for 1B, it has to have either municipal water, sewer, or appropriate source. That determination will have been made ahead of time.
does 1B have to have water and sewer? It has four, okay, okay, good,
So there's two.
All right.
rules.
so we got lots of
Yeah.
ors.
Anything a lot more,
Yeah.
check any of the boxes.
Check one.
Okay.
So on page 4, section 4. Striking the language. That the land use review board and A&R don't have enforcement authority. That's being unstruck.
This is if a designation is revoked. Then it goes back, the enforcement goes back to.
No.
No, sorry.
No, this is the issue about towns enforcing. So
Right.
as part of the exemptions that are under Z. For tier 1A, it says that a previously issued permit for development located in tier 1A shall remain attached to the property. However, neither the board nor the agency shall enforce the permit or assert permit amendment jurisdiction on the tract or tracted lands unless the designation is revoked. Or the municipality has not taken any reasonable action to enforce the conditions of the permit. So this language was added to say that as part of Act 181 that in tier 1A areas, towns are taking over fully, including enforcement authority, so the board and the A&R do not have enforcement authority any longer. In the prior version of this, that was struck, this is being unstruck. Next is interim exemption BB. The date here is being changed to January 1, 2030. This is the exemption, temporary exemption for accessory dwelling units.
And this is one that the land use review board has a different recommendation. But we can hear them.
On page 5, in subdivision CC, or subsection CC, the date again is January 1, 2030, and this is no permit or permit amendment for the conversion of a structure used for a commercial permit to 29 or fewer units of housing.
And this is one you should hear from the land use review board.
All right, still on page 5, down to the other interim housing exemptions. So, first for, 75 units of housing in a new town center, growth center, or designated neighborhood development area. The date's being changed to January 1, 2030. And also mixed use development. Based on. Enter.
This is one we should talk, but I wouldn't mind keeping it 23rd, but we can talk.
And mixed use development, is that defined somewhere? What is that?
It is. I read the definition last time.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay, but I do think so there in this. In the prior draft, this proposal had been in there about mixed use development being included in the housing exceptions. It's just actually being moved slightly, which
Okay.
I could go either way on, I guess, but. No permit or permanent amendment is required for the subdivision for the construction of housing projects. And mixed use development with 75 units or fewer.
Okay. I think I remember.
So mixed use development is, it's a mixture of uses, there has to be at least 40% of the square footage for housing. But the rest can be commercial, not industrial.
Okay.
And it is defined in Act 56,001, number 28. And it is the construction of both mixed income housing. And construction of space for any combination of retail, office, services, artisan, and recreational and communities facilities. Provided that at least 40% of the gross floor area is mixed income housing. It does not include industrial use.
Okay.
The next interim exemption at the bottom and into page 6, so this is for the 50 units of housing, so it's changing the date to January 1, 2030. 2030, and no permit or permit amendment is required for the subdivision for or the construction of housing projects. And mixed development with 50 units or fewer. Constructed on 10 acres or less, located entirely within either village center. Or the census designated urbanized area with 50,000 residents. Kind of a word of mouth transit route.
Same.
Page 6. Subdivision 3, so this is the exemption for downtowns. So in January 1, 2030, no permit or permit amendment is required for the subdivision for or the construction of housing projects. And mixed use development in downtown development districts. So no cap on that one. All right. On page 7. There are a couple of changes to the tier 3 rulemaking section. So down towards the bottom of page 7, new language has been inserted that says, so what the land use review board needs to do as part of the tier 3 rulemaking process. So they're gonna look at whether to allow for review under fewer than all the criteria under NBSA 6,086, 1 through 10, which is exactly the criteria.
That, I understand what this, I know this isn't your language, so I'm not suggesting that. But whether to allow for, that seems really weird to me. I think we should be telling them what they should be writing rules on, not them deciding whether to allow or not.
Mhm. Mhm.
And if we want them to use fewer criteria for certain projects, then we should tell them, make rules on how to use fewer criteria. Up to 4, or whatever it is that we decide, but whether to allow for review, that is super open-ended.
Mhm. I agree. I think. I think it could be, I agree, I think it could be clearer that we should say. You should use fewer. I'm hesitant to say how many fewer. Because that may depend, but. But I am agreeing with the direction where you're going with that.
Yeah,
So how we reframe it, I'm not sure.
Well, I think the goal would be to be sure that the criteria they apply are consistent with the license tier if it exists. And I guess I'm not bothered by getting the board the authority to figure this out because it would take us a lot of thought to figure out that. So, my guess is that you're conservative,
Mhm.
and it'll be the obvious,
Mhm.
that are not applied, don't do it. So I don't know, I'm just not, I'm not bothered by it.
I just don't like the word whether.
Yeah, I'm. Thinking of language that would be something more like,
Under what circumstances?
the land use review board shall only apply. The criteria deemed relevant. Or something. To that effect, and they get to determine which ones are relevant, but the directive is like. More
Yeah.
narrow.
Cause this, I mean, this is so open-ended that they could say, no,
No, we're gonna do all
we're
that.
not going to, and I think it's been established that we would like them to do that. And so,
It hasn't been, not in my mind, hasn't been established, I mean. I'm willing to let them think about it, but I haven't, I'm not convinced what we should or shouldn't be doing.
Mhm.
Because there's gonna be unintended consequences that we're not gonna see. I'd rather let them just think, I'm letting them figure it out.
well, if they're figuring this out in rulemaking, then by process, they'll come back to LCAR with rules, so. But it just seems to me, yeah, again, I don't really like the term whether,
What if it said something more like determine. Which criteria. Shall apply.
Yeah, because it could be all, if they really reach that, I don't think they will, but. Yeah, determine which criteria.
What's the word whether?
It's consistent.
It's not as direct.
Consistent with that. Tier 3.
yeah, I mean, it's consistent with the intent of tier 3, determine how to apply fewer. Criteria, Act 250 criteria.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
I like that. Is that helpful, Ellen?
You just you wanna say determine. Which criteria? I think it was consistent, yeah, that was what Senator Bombards wants with tier 3. That may be implied, but to just say, determine. How. To allow review. For fewer than all the criteria.
So I think the thing we have to be careful about here is. What if?
what if it's a shopping center,
Mhm.
and then shopping center, we would want the entirety of Act 52 in here.
Mhm.
So it's in that, because there's nothing saying unless it would otherwise be triggered by Act 250. So yeah, this is why I'm just compiling the word, figure it out, whether and how.
Mhm. That's raising an interesting question, which is, does tier 3 sit on top of regular Act 250? Or does it replace Act 250? So if a shopping center would normally trigger Act 250 and it's in a tier 3 area, do both? Does both?
I mean, we could just say how to, when, like, when appropriate or something
Mhm,
like that,
mhm.
or, because I don't think any. I mean, maybe a few people are, but I don't think anybody is really saying we'd never want to have all the criteria apply. But there are many circumstances where having narrower criteria or fewer criteria apply to the review, it makes sense. I mean, we've talked about a lot of examples and, you know. The examples of kinds of projects and examples of the criteria that wouldn't apply, so.
Mhm.
I think using the term whether leaves it up to them, they could say, no, we want all the criteria to apply all the time.
Mhm.
And what I think we're saying, at least what I'm saying is, no, there are some circumstances when we don't want all the criteria to apply, and we want you to figure that, how to do that out.
So just the fact we're saying it as an option suggests that it's something they should think about seriously
Mhm.
without being prescriptive.
Mhm. How are you feeling about this language about, with, consistent with the intent of tier 3, determine how to allow for fewer than all,
Whether and how, whether
And-
and how.
or like, how about like when appropriate? Instead of whether, like, when it's appropriate to
Yes,
apply.
something like that, as long as there's total flexibility for the work to really think through carefully.
I'm not sure it would be legal for them to change without the statutory, change the number of criteria they would review without statutory change, so I'll just look at.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
There, the language around tier 3 in the statute right now is vague
Mhm.
So,
and references the rules of the board. So I do think you should consider how clear you want to be on that. I have to go,
Oh, you have to go.
so, yes, 9:30.
Okay.
to have this discussion, but maybe just the fact that we've had a discussion, the board can actually end up suggesting to us statutory changes, if that's what the board.
I mean, maybe they have to come back with a
Yeah.
report to tell
Yeah.
us, but that's.
Or just going to tell us, you know.
Mhm, mhm.
So the next part, which is related to this at the top community, is that they will be reporting on any necessary changes to how it should be administered. So,
We can add more specific language to that report potentially.
Yeah.
And in the
you may want to review this entire moving section.
Okay,
yeah,
okay, sounds good. Thank you. Okay, to be continued on that. And so we're gonna move now to Ms. Rice from, and also Ms. Head, welcome, to the Land Use Review Board. So, and they have a set of suggestions, to recommend. Oh, no, that's. Oh, the warning just. Yeah, so, yeah. Which I think I forwarded to the committee.
Okay.
Oh, amazing.
There, but I need most. And I have them. It's the same as the document that I sent you guys on February 26th and.
with council.
Okay, now,
Thank you, I don't.
okay, I'm straight here.
I think I have this.
So there should be, it's gonna be you and for the.
Great, but thank you. Do you want?
Sure.
You can have it, but just.
Post. Monday, Wednesday.
Yeah,
We want.
yeah, it's the same.
Okay.
Does everyone happen, you need us? Anyone in the audience want, there are 2 copies here.
I'll take one. Sorry.
You have that tonight.
Okay, welcome. Thank you for having us. Yeah, so we have talked through some of your recommendations already, so I don't know that we need to unless you have comments about things,
I'm-
dates.
I'm Jenny Ronis, I'm general counsel for the Land Use Review Board, I'm joined by Sarah Howard, our vice chair. I think it might be easiest or most comprehensive if we just track through the red version that's got our comments against draft 2.2, because I think there's a lot of stuff that can knock out very quickly.
Okay.
So, starting with page 2, on the dates. So generally, the board was recommending that all of the tier deadlines happened over the term of the new year into 2027. And that would include the rules road roll, and that all of the housing exemptions would carry on through 2029. We see that you guys have proposed 2030 for the housing exemptions. I don't believe we have any concern with that. So there would be a period in which municipalities would have their tiers set up, their ability to use that, but still wrap up on the housing exemption that we need more down.
You can comment? Yes.
Just a thought about that. The whole point of the continuing exemptions was to give time for the tiers to get fully in place. They'll be fully in place by the end of 29, is that correct?
I think it would be more accurate to say our system for reviewing and approving tiers will be fully in place, but whether every municipality has taken advantage or gotten to apply or gone through that process might not be.
So the longer we wait, the more they. Right.
I don't think that's entirely
Can
true.
you say that again? I
Well,
didn't hear you. Okay.
Yeah, I think a lot of the municipalities,
Yeah.
I just had a lovely chat with half a dozen communities that are considering tier 1A for coming here, so there are some that are.
So you're gonna continue, but you will have determined which areas are tier 1A and tier 1B eligible by early in 27. Because the maps will be,
We'll have gone through all those
and
future
then
lands.
the communities will decide whether to apply. They'll have all of 27 and 28. If we were to make the deadline for 29, that's a long time. Do they really need almost 3 years instead of 2 years?
So I think one of the reasons why, just reading this morning, and this hasn't gone to the whole board to consider the extension of the deadlines. But it's something that I don't think we would be opposed to. As we've started to go through some of these different regional entities, Lowell, for instance, we've just gone through, we were just discussing that yesterday. There are quite a few communities that are not going for tier 1B because they don't have locally adopted regulations municipal. And so great conversations are occurring right now between the RPCs and their municipalities. I think the same as that, there are quite a few unfortunately expired municipal plans. It would be great to allow those communities to get municipal plans to take at least a year to get off the tape. So recognizing all the great planning that's happening. And recognizing to a lot of that's kind of on your allocation municipal planning grants to do that. I think the company should.
So not a bad thing.
I mean, just as an example, the town of Middlebury's plan is expired, they want to be tier 1A. They need to go through the whole planning process. And like with Montpelier, people in Middlebury have opinions, so it will take a while and they need the time.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
I'll note there was a slight disagreement, not disagreement, that's way too strong, on page 2, line 13. I had put January 1st, 2028, because I was reading the language to make sure that we didn't have a 1-day gap, but Ellen maybe, I would also listen to Ellen if she thinks that's not an issue.
Well, I think that was just consistent with the date above. I'm not sure that if you have opinions that it should be January 1st, 2028. I don't know that.
It's just the phrasing, you know, up to this date or starting on this date, change when those. I don't think it's anything that we have strong.
Okay,
Over the 24 hours.
okay.
We agree with, the striking out of the other language and would also note, so in the original draft that's not here now, around line 16. Was the addition of the new designated types that would pull this into, it would basically require us to look at multiple sets of maps. And I think that the board is happy to clarify in existing temporary housing guidance that the existing designated downtown development districts, designated neighborhood development areas, designated growth centers are going to remain eligible even if they have their future land use maps approved for purposes of determining whether they can still use the housing exemptions in those areas. So that doesn't change on anybody
Mhm.
for the purpose of that. So
Okay.
we like that.
Good.
Turning to page 3. This is the language, the environmental justice language that's excluding priority housing from flood zones. So we had proposed sort of 2 parts to this. The first part is lines 3 through 6. If you put a period there, that is the language that's in all of the other temporary housing exemptions. Starting in line 7, in a municipality that is adopted flood hazards or corridors, et cetera. That language is actually from Title 24, and I believe the standard that the municipalities will be held to on a permanent basis. I think there's some concern that the way that those 2 different parts interact might be overly restrictive. And we're perfectly fine with putting a period at the end of rule on line 6 and striking the rest of it. And I believe that brings us into alignment with A&R. So striking lines 7 through 10 on page 3.
Sorry, can you explain just one more time why that's a conflict?
We don't wanna be more restrictive on priority housing than we are with the other areas of exemptions.
But with my,
Okay.
when we did this, it was the Title 24 revisions there. On the 226 or whatever it was 2 years ago. That language about river corridor abundance was key to it, and we're saying strike it.
We're saying strike it out of the priority housing temporary exception because like Sarah was just talking about, a lot of towns are still standing up a lot of this work.
We're still in the temporary exemption
Yes,
section.
so
Okay,
the idea is just to bring priority housing into the existing level.
Okay.
Lower on page 3. This is about. This was the new language, we haven't had a chance to review it with the board, but I think we're generally very happy with the idea of priority housing projects still being eligible, of areas that have tier 1 status being eligible for priority housing, just for everyone's with quick reference, priority housing allows for 75 units, whereas the tier 1B exemption is for 50 units. So depending on how you craft this, about whether or not tier 1 approved tier 1B areas are included, it could get you 25 more units of housing in tier 1B areas than they would others without being required to get connected. But that was just my thought to share with you guys. Any questions?
We had talked about rephrasing some of that, and do you have any opinions about that discussion?
My gut reaction was, and is eligible for tier 1B. Which, and you can say and not get approved, but if you say and not get approved, the tier 1B would then hold us last 25 minutes. But Sarah had some thoughts as well.
I worry, and the idea is, maybe, could be considered for tier 1B, just to the point of, to be eligible for tier 1B, you have to have the approved municipal plans, you might not have that.
get the concept of it, I think adding in something about not yet approved, might be helpful.
Would be improvement.
Yes, good.
I think this. I mean, what does approved mean? Because I think that the tier 1B areas. Have been approved in the regional plan, maybe approved by the board. But they have not, the town has decided not to ask for tier 1B. So they are,
The town has to ask formally for tier 1B in order to have it be approved with the regional plan. So you won't get it coming through the regional plan for approval for tier 1B unless you have a municipal resolution.
well, it's been. In a lot of the towns in Addison County, they've mapped tier 1B areas that the town is not going to use, I think.
So different levels of it. There are the 4 areas with your future land use map, downtown, village center, plan growth area, village area. That are, once you approve those through your regional plan, those are areas that you could come and ask for tier 1B. You have some communities that will ask for that with the regional plan approval, so it's an all-in-one deal. You have other municipalities that are working really hard on advancing a town plan or may not have that municipal resolution yet. That could be considered for it because they have the future land use. So I know what this is trying to get at, but the eligibility determination is ultimately made by the board, either with the regional plan or as a separate action thereafter.
There is a standalone for tier 1B process as well, if you. For whatever reason, as a municipality didn't have your ducks in a row or were not committed to being tier 1B at the time the original plan was approved. Then the board will consider that separately, so they're not missing out on the future ability to be tier 1B. Right now.
We're confused.
How did you feel about this possible alternate language that is, and is eligible for tier B?
Are you asking?
Oh, yeah,
Are you asking?
yeah.
I mean, I think. That's okay.
Okay.
I think.
It's eligible, has been determined to be eligible.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I'm confused by what you guys are saying versus what I heard from my towns during break. I talked to a lot of them.
yeah.
So I don't know if it's just my brain on a Tuesday morning not understanding it, or if they're not understanding it, or I'm not sure.
Sure.
And I just wanna make sure that for towns that have land in their town that could be tier 1B land, but they're deciding not to do it for whatever reason, that they get these, they get this, the exemption.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you could say that, by saying is not yet approved for tier. Sure, I feel like there's lots of ways to get there. It's, and I'm wondering about like, is there confusion around like, approved by who?
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
approved by whom, because it could be, is it approved by
Right.
which board?
Right,
There are
because
multiples.
There was an
involved
approval to be eligible, and then there's an approval to be tier 1B status, so
Yeah.
maybe just clarifying like which approval we're talking about.
Yeah,
Is that,
yeah,
that could be,
who's the approver?
yes, yeah, okay.
Then you could say not yet conferred tier 1B, because I think the way that the board. The board refers to in guidance as conferring tier 1B.
This feels like something that we can work on some wordsmithing around. And I think we've all got what the intent is. It's just a matter of like finding the right words to make it as clear as possible, so.
I would trust Ellen with my life.
Okay, all right. Very
That
good.
is not a full opinion, that's not formal, that's just me.
Okay. Fair enough.
Okay, so then, on page 4, there's the restoration of some language regarding the transfer of enforcement of permit jurisdiction and then enforcement that would go with it. We agree with restoring the language that's there. So we're fine with that. The one thing I wanted to point out, on page 5, I think the addition of mixed-use development hasn't been explicitly discussed by the board, but I don't see that there would be any particular concern on that. I just wanted,
Page 5 is different, my picture.
I'm looking at your markup now.
Oh, okay.
I know, I'm going back and forth.
Can we go back to the language that got unstruck?
Yes,
Again, I'm confused, but, is unstriking this language trying to address the issue of who is enforcing permits in 1A areas?
correct.
And how does unstriking this not, because this is current, unstriking it means we're going back to current law.
Correct.
I thought the whole point was we wanted to change current law to make it clear that municipalities are not. They're not required to enforce the permits. So if we're going back to current law, isn't that not changing?
There's 2 parts of
Okay.
what we're recommending to correct. So there's the part in 6081, which is Title 10, actually, that's our part. And that's where we want to have this language that specifically allows us to step back in if the designated agendas revoked or the municipality is not taking reasonable action to enforce the conditions of the permit. That would be on our side.
Okay,
There's other language that we're gonna talk about
later, okay.
I
later.
think it's page 11.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's on the title for
Okay.
municipality side that clarifies when the transfer of permits.
okay, I'll wait then. Okay.
Okay,
Okay, so on page 5 of your markup. There's an addition to mixed use development, like I said, the one thing I want to note for you guys is that mixed development, it is in our statute, it does require some mixed income housing, which has an affordability component. Just so that you're aware, the type of housing that would be created in a mixed use development would have some aspects of affordability.
that's like a capital A affordability.
Yes, I mean, I think we have a slightly different, we don't use the word affordable housing, but
Well,
you know,
it's in that.
there's income limits.
Okay, thank you.
I just thought that that's a good one.
Okay.
So then. The next thing that we would bring to your attention is on page 7 of your markup. This is the discussion about the reviewing under the criteria. I think we are on the same page as Ellen. Which is that. As the statute is currently written, 6086 requires findings under all 10 criteria for a permit to issue. This is the language that we proposed and are happy to work with you guys on something better. The idea is that this would go into the tier 3 rulemaking. And then it would result in potential recommendations in order to bridge that statutory gap. If that's where we are.
So. You speak a little bit to like how that report works, so there's a report that comes back to us and then we need to approve it, or you're just telling us this is what we're proposing?
This is what we're proposing right now. And I think that. I can't speak to the whole, what selection of criteria is current, we haven't gotten there.
Yeah,
But the idea is whatever the final product is would come with statutory recommendations for the
I see.
guys to review, so that. In the event that we go in fewer than all 10 criteria, we can work on 6086, which would otherwise prohibit us from doing.
I think I am understanding now. Because you need some statutory backup, and so you'd be proposing statutory changes based on it, gotcha. Okay, go ahead.
Well, that, if that's the case, I don't think it should be in the rulemaking section, because that would have. Having it in the rulemaking section implies that they're gonna make rules about it. This is really just, they should report back to us on their recommendations for how to use fewer than all of the criteria in tier 1B. Or tier 3,
Yep.
sorry.
That's it.
I just think it's a technical matter, we can't propose rules to shortcut statute.
Exactly, and I think, exactly, that's why it shouldn't be in here.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, and then that was sort of,
Well, so just getting to top, top of page 8, then, because this is. Any, is that what's encompassed by like any changes to how?
how it should be administered, or that would be include statutory languages, you know.
Is this is the part then where we might say. You know, figure out how to do this when appropriate with fewer than all of the criteria.
Yes,
Okay.
And then we would have to change the law.
Right, after they come back with a proposal.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep, that makes sense to me. Okay. Okay, thank you.
so that's where the comments with Ellen left off. The other thing that I flagged in the draft treatment too, and then you'll forgive me, I'll then flip back to our red line to make sure I covered everything. On page 11. There's a strikeout of subparagraph H starting on line 4. This is the second half of the enforcement handover issue. We recommend restoring subparagraph H and then striking the word not from the end of line 5. So that it will say, within a tier 1A area, the appropriate municipal panel shall enforce any existing permits. I think there's also grammar in there.
Wait, you're on page.
I'm on page 11
Okay.
of our draft 222. The original draft 1.1, and then again in this draft, both recommend striking subparagraph H. We recommend restoring it with the striking of the word not. So that the word, it would say, within a tier 1A area, the appropriate municipal panel shall enforce any existing permits issued under 10 VSA chapter 1 that has had its permit conditions transferred to municipal permit pursuant to subsection G section.
That makes sense.
That would, we think that makes that clear that at that point, the municipality is responsible for that enforcement. I could get really wonky about how we were recommending this because, you know, municipalities are delectable and have to be authorized to do things for us. So that's what we were hoping that would accomplish.
So my only concern about that is, because it's pursuant to subsection G of this section, because I want to make sure that, it's still doing what that G is doing what we want it to do in terms of, municipalities having enforcement authority just for a I guess my question is about how do we know when the transfer has occurred?
I believe that's within subsection, well, G generally sets out the process. And I
Yeah.
do believe there is a notice requirement at the end. Of choice. Yeah, subparagraph 6, which is actually at the top of this page,
Okay, yep,
talks about the final action by the appropriate municipal panel. And there's actually all the language for subsection B is here in draft. And I think we don't
Yes.
have any concerns with what that process is as far as the transfer of an individual permit.
okay. Yes,
But just to make sure we have it, what we're, the goal here is you continue to enforce unless the town makes a, like, let's now make it permanent, and at which point the permit gets done.
Correct, it would be on a permit by permit basis
Yes.
after tier 1.
Yes, permit by permit, so it trickles in, if there's an amendment, that's what we're doing.
Yes, and
Okay.
at that point, it would be a municipal permit.
Yep.
That might have some special activity,
Yep.
holdover conditions based on the process set forth in paragraph G. And we would let go of it.
Yep.
We would not need to amend or do anything, we would get notice that that's his,
So enforcement will trickle in, it's based on permit,
that is.
much less scary. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So then just to switch back over to my red draft to make sure that I didn't miss anything. Okay,
So there's still on page 11 and then.
Which version? That one's page 11 or yours?
I'm looking.
So,
Page 10, the top of page 10 of my red line version.
Yours, okay?
I believe we recommended striking that section. Based on the conversation that we would have had with the committee, I think the last time we were here about our ongoing updating of the procedural of our processes, and we weren't sure what
Yeah, so
wanted
this.
to be accomplished.
So this was, the aim here, was in thinking about how municipalities have gone, or not municipalities, how regions have gone through the process that, that the land use review board have grown or understood more about, how to apply things as the process has gone on, and so wanting to make sure that those who went through the process first have consistent application with those who have gone last. And in the last conversation that we had with Janet, she was mentioning that, oh yeah, no, I'm about to send a letter to the people from Rutland about or from Rutland County about their maps adjusting things, but the thought was, you know, how procedurally are we ensuring that happens consistently? And so that was the intent here, and I appreciate that. The thought from you all was that there's no need to do that, unless there's something more you wanna add.
So the language as you currently have it is specific to tier 1A. We might not have our first tier 1A community before October. I think what you were specifically talking about is the future land use.
Yes.
So that is what you want. I'd say that's not what you have in your
Sure,
letter.
that's fair. Thank you. So if we're gonna keep this sentiment, then maybe it's, update its guidelines, just in general, consistent, to ensure consistent application of requirements. Maybe just period.
Which we have been continually doing, so
Yeah, fair.
I think hopefully, and you have back to votes to speak later, but I think what you heard from the word and from back to the last time we were both in was we're continuing to work on this together. And we don't really see a need to require that legislatively. But if that's your intent, I'd say we are not going to be all through the land use maps by October either. Hopefully by the end of next year.
Yeah.
There had one last about the appeals.
So the last part is, it's now section 10 in the new draft, it was section 8, not on page 10 of my deadlines. Keep flashing, but guys, we were recommending that this report be moved to any appeals bill. It seems to be more related to that than I agree.
Well, and I also understood that, at the very least, you all did not want to be in charge of running this report.
It's not without more structure.
I think a lot of what is proposed is giving us more time because we need more time, so adding in one more thing that we need to do at a time that we're trying to accomplish the other priorities. This is a little bit fraught, but I think the general sentiment was we do not have appeals jurisdiction yet.
Right.
And so for us to pass judgment on something that's not yet in effect was a little bit early.
Fair enough. Yeah, yes, go ahead.
There are two things that I'm not sure are in here and I wanted to. One is to allow the updating of regional plans interim that have to have a shorter process if they have just an amendment to their plan midway through. That was discussed and wondered if you had thoughts on that.
That was in the BAFTA proposals.
Yeah.
We had some ideas about reorganizing that section conceptually, but content wise, we agree with the proposal that there should be. There's essentially overall there'll be 3 tracks for review. There's the full-blown regional plan, future land use map, pre-application application act, which is going on right now. There are minor future land use map changes, and that's set out in statute. And then, so this would be sort of a middle road for separate tier 1B, regional plan amendments, and non-minor future land use map amendments. That would have less process than the full-blown pre-application system now, but slightly more than the minor land use amendments.
Okay.
So we agree with the concept of that.
Okay. And then the second one was the road restriction. We had a conversation about whether or not it applies in areas that have been mapped for 1B, but have not opted or been approved, whatever the word, right word is. Don't become 1B, but they're mapped as 1B. And saying that the road restriction would not apply to those areas, even if they don't choose to become 1B. And I don't know if you followed that conversation or had thoughts on that.
And my thoughts from an administrative side is that if we could get some clarity on whether those areas, the ones that are eligible but aren't opted in, if they remain tier 2, then I would assume that the road rule would apply to them because it applies to tier 2. If you're going to create a sort of subcategory of tier 1, the eligible but not exercised that are exempt from the road rule, then I think we would need some more statutory language to straighten that out.
I think we should,
Mhm.
let's do it too.
Well, so I mean, this is again, a lot of the towns in my area have. Apparently, they're mapped in the regional plan as 1B, and the towns may not decide to go for 1B. And
I think under our current system, then they would be considered tier 2 until they become 1B.
right, so that's what I'm suggesting is that for those areas that have been mapped but not become a lot of those areas are in towns, and so they may not be able to or not want to become 1B for a variety of reasons, but they could be eligible to become 1B, and the question is whether or not we should apply for it and apply to it, and I think it should not.
Okay. Well, let's put a pin in that one, because I think that's gonna be a good point of discussion.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's something we haven't discussed as a board, a bit challenging, because I think, the chamber has stated, I think that the terminology around T1B eligible is something that I would want to see fleshed out more, because technically to be tier 1B eligible, you have to have that adopted plan. So right now, Middlebury is not tier 1B eligible because it doesn't have its adopted plan, it has
Right.
future land use. But it hasn't done all the other things needed on the checklist for Act 181, so.
Okay, I might just need to have a conversation with you guys about the whole, I'm still confused about tier 1B and what that whole thing is.
All good. Okay.
So
Yes, go ahead.
This is, you've just touched on something that I think we should think through a little bit, as you said, actually. Because you said that it's the term eligible is not really defined, or it's defined in a way that it's maybe not the way we're thinking about it. It's on the map as potentially eligible, but then there's all the other things that have to happen. And I think some of the time we've been talking about it's on the map. Being eligible, but in fact, that's not. That's not the right terminology. So, okay,
Yeah, and this is why I'm
Yeah,
confused, I think.
yeah.
So you're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
There are 4 future land use map categories that you need to have in order to get that first checklist towards eligibility. Downtown, village center, plan growth, village area. And then there's a bunch of other things you need to do on the checklist.
Yeah.
For us to consider evaluating. So you might want to start with that first.
Yeah, so we were talking about on the eligible, we meant that. We meant on the map. And so we have to make sure that that's what we're actually saying.
As opposed to, and you've checked all these other
Yes,
boxes.
yes.
You just haven't opted in.
Yes,
And-
because that's what we made to the priority housing projects. That's what we were thinking, to make sure we're actually saying that.
And I think that there is another discussion, we would absolutely love to see as many tier 1B communities as possible. And why people aren't opting in is perhaps another conversation.
Yep.
And again, more incentives that we can offer, great, if we're taking them and making them into something else, not giving that to be a specifically tier 1B. Benefit, then are we eroding at the number of communities who would take that up once these interim exemptions are, so that's.
Yeah.
Another issue that I heard about in my conversations was that some of the areas that are mapped as tier 1B are conserved and therefore can't be built on. And so they're technically in the 1B area, but they can't be built on. And so there are issues that the towns are trying to figure out, like, what do we do with this? Cause this would be a perfect place to build housing right near our, little downtown, but we can't do it, so. I don't know if there's a fix to that, but has that been an issue that you guys have has come
Don't
up?
believe we've discussed this.
Okay. It's come up with multiples of my
That's
town,
interesting.
yeah.
Okay. Good to know. No drama. Okay, well, thank you. Appreciate it. We're gonna move now to Sumitra, who is gonna walk us through some of Baptist recommendations. Welcome. Oh.
No,
But it is online. Okay. So this one, as I understand it, we don't have hard copies yet, but it is online.
So we could probably get them if you want.
Okay, we're waiting for them to come.
Oh, yeah. So. Thank you for having me to the record, Captain with Northwest Regional Planning Commission, and I believe Charlie Baker will be joining online eventually. So, yeah.
Someone needs to mute. Okay, great, thank you.
Would you like me to share our proposed language on the screen? Would that be helpful?
I think that would be useful,
Okay,
especially.
so I will join Zoom. I didn't do that yet because I wasn't sure.
Yeah, no worries.
And we've been here before to talk about this in theory. And so what I'll be going through next is just giving an overview of the specific changes that we would like to recommend.
Yeah, have we seen this one stated 218? I've got 26.
There's a 218 version.
Have we had that previously?
It was posted online briefly and then it went away, so now it's back.
Okay.
It's under
Okay.
today's date, it is now back.
So,
I think I don't have that.
okay.
Okay.
Oh, Sherry's not turned on.
Oh, no.
Well, we have it. We
So we do have it online.
Is that 218?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just posted.
Okay.
That's what we were doing over there, is trying to figure out why it was posted early.
Okay, I'm gonna go there.
Great, too many versions. Lots of versions, so lots of comments.
Okay, well, it is posted online and we all got it digitally. Okay, so I think you can go
Go
ahead.
ahead and start.
Yes,
Okay,
if that's all right.
Sure, I will go ahead and start, so. And the version that you have online, that's posted under today's date, So this, as a quick reminder, the regional planning commission are proposing changes that go really into a couple of buckets. One being process related and making the process go more smoothly. And the other is to attain some consistency between sections of statute that were amended under Act 181 to actually make it function a little bit better. And there's a lot of pages here, but it should go quick. All right, so the first change is at the top of page 1, and that's simply to move when we get the community investment board comments up in the process to happen earlier in the process rather than later. So it's a very simple change to make it the comments more effective in terms of when they get there. The second change,
Can I ask about that? Can you just give us like one of why that's important?
because they comment on whether the designated areas, the centers and neighborhoods make sense.
Okay, great, thank you.
And the sooner we get comments in the process, easier it is to incorporate.
Yeah.
And then the next change is related to the land use review boards to confirmation that our plan meets all of the criteria. We're suggesting adding some language that has the land use review board confirm that our areas planned for growth, or the core 4 areas, as we started to call them, do have enough land and redevelopment opportunities to meet our house targets. Okay,
Sorry, is that E?
that is E on line 22.
Okay.
And then moving down, lines 27 through lines 12 on the next page. That creates a new process for regional planning commissions to amend our regional plan. Right now, statute does not give us a process to make amendments that's simple and efficient. It requires us to go through the full 6 to 8 month adoption process. This would create a new process for allowing us to do amendments. The land use review board had some recommended modifications to this language, and I think we were okay with that. But we didn't, it's not incorporated in here, but
Okay,
when you get there, we're okay.
just to go to the land use review board very quickly, you all are okay with this idea?
Yeah.
Being incorporated, but you may have some tweaks. I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
I believe we shared a markup of Baptist markup with you on February 26th as well.
Okay. Okay, great.
And then I'll just note that there's 2 additional things that need to happen here. One is that we did propose this language for amendments. There's a couple other places in statute that refer to the adoption process that might need some tweaking, but we just want to bring that to your attention to incorporate this adoption, the amendment process, but we didn't include it here because we're not ledge council, so we're not making it that. But I just want to make note of that. And then finally, we have a couple of 3, at least that I know of, regional plans that are expiring within the next few months. And if this does, these changes do come into play, they would like some time to adjust their plans. So there would need to be, if possible, some statutory extension to those expirations. So that regional planning commissions have until the end of the calendar year to actually get this done.
Wait, that's not for amendments, that's
That's
for
not
the-
amendments, that's just in terms of regional plan adoption process. That's just an additional change that we needed.
So that's not language that's in here yet?
Correct.
Okay.
We, it's my understanding that would be like a session law, and that's
Yeah,
the sort of drafting stuff that.
okay. And I just wanna make sure that I have the wording of that right. What is it that is needed? It is an extension.
Of the expiration of regional plans until the end of December 2026. So December 31st, 2026, for any plans that were expired before then.
2026.
You have it here as list. Yeah.
Yeah, in blue.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, not the exact language, but.
I don't think you're on the same.
I'm not.
Yeah.
Is there an extra one of those? I thought I gave you one. No,
that wasn't it.
well, I was using.
If you don't have one, you can take mine and I can work on it. I can follow along by electronic version.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, just gave you one, it's probably.
Probably was
Sorry.
Okay, I apologize.
This-
Oh, what is it? Okay, phew, all right.
Thank you. I think I was.
No, that's okay. Okay, we're
Lots of paper to.
well, I already printed some of these, so, okay. Anyway, all right. I
And
see,
then,
okay.
the other change related to regional plan adoption. We're gonna take a side journey, and this is starting on line 18 of page 2. Little side journey to enhance energy planning. So when regional planning commissions do what's called an enhanced energy plan, that gets some additional benefits in the Public Utilities Commission proceedings, the plan gets additional consideration. Every time we adopt a plan, we have to do a full review of that enhanced energy plan by the Department of Public Service. This language would just note that if we're adopting plans and not changing the energy plan, the Department of Public Service doesn't need to do their full review. So it's just a streamlining of the process for the regions and the county.
That seems like a new issue.
Mhm. And so, just to say it out loud, I mean, I do have some concerns about this, so. I would wanna hear a little bit more testimony about that. I mean, I appreciate the idea of streamlining the plan, but, I just wanna flag that I have questions
Yeah.
about implications.
And we have talked to the department about this language, and I will note that simultaneously, there's a bill under consideration in the House that may make similar changes, but I don't know where it's at process right now. All right, so now we get into the elements of a regional plan, starting on the top of page 3. And this is the section where we are trying to start to attain consistency in statute, with the overall goal being that definitions of future land use areas, designations, etc., are all in one place in statute, and that place is the future land use area descriptions in Title 24. So the other thing we're trying to do here is to clear up some of the language that has caused some challenges as we're doing this mapping, not in theory, but in real life. And working with the land use review board, with our communities and others, and trying to figure out how to clarify some of this language so that we can really map the areas that are logically planned for growth. And I can go through them all individually, or I can simply note that and take any questions.
I think it'd be good to go through it.
Okay, I just wanna make sure you had time before I
I think it's important
started
to
to launch
understand
right in. Okay.
suggestions.
Sure. Okay, so we'll start at the top of page 3, line 5. We would just like to add language that clarifies that our future land use maps at the regional level will be compatible with the local level plans that we have approved. So just to make that perfectly clear, that it's local to regional.
So does this ultimately create more deference to the municipal plans?
It creates a little bit more deference to the regional plans,
Local plans.
the local plans. But it only creates deference to local plans that have already been reviewed and approved by the regional planning commission, so it's like a feedback loop.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
But is it a feedback? Because is it possible the regional plan, thinking at the regional level would be different? This part of the idea here was it had the local and the regional coming together and combination of down and up. And this sounds like more just
Because the regional planning commission needs to approve a municipal plan in order to get this consideration, that's the loop back down.
but the municipal plan isn't going to be thinking regionally.
The municipal plan is not gonna be thinking regionally, but when we approve a regional plan, a municipal plan, it has to be compatible with the regional plan and the neighboring municipalities plans. And so that process has the regional review of the local plan.
So what is this adding? That's not already in that.
I think it adds it explicitly. That we are. Relying on the local plans as a starting point for our planning at the regional level. And then making sure that we incorporate regional thinking and statutory criteria.
Okay. Thanks, let's keep going.
Line 11. We also think it's important for all of our future land use areas to be consistent with the smart growth principles, which we'll get to in a minute.
Yeah.
All right, and then. When we talk about the downtowns and village centers, that's the next section, starting on line 16, there's. Several tweaks to the language here to really reflect the smart growth principles and guidelines and refer to Vermont's historic and traditional pattern of development of concentrated areas for growth and working landscape and countryside. It's trying to respect that goal, but tweak the language to make it actually work for the land and use planning that we're doing today.
Any questions about that?
I just, on line 21. Traditional or historic core. Or area, core, I mean, just
Or something?
or something, it seems like.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it just seems odd, I don't know,
It seems like it's missing a word.
missing a word, but
All clarifications. And then moving on to the planned growth area. Starting on line 29, this changes on line 32 and 33.
Actually, can I go back? I'm sorry, so back on line 21, so when we talk about. Village center or downtowns or village centers that are traditional. If originally it said traditional and historic. And now we're saying traditional or historic, are there any examples that you can give me of like places that would be either traditional but not historic or vice versa?
I want to give you examples, but I don't want to give you any in our region that are gonna be before the land use review board pretty shortly, so let me think.
You can also get back to us about that question
Yeah.
if you wanna think about it, but that is a question that I have, like, what is that distinction?
Alright, here's I have to think about that,
Okay.
because the examples I'm coming up with are my region, and I don't wanna talk about that. too
Right.
much, because they're gonna be,
If that's something
reviewing that very.
If that's something that you could follow up with us about
Yes.
though, that would be helpful for thinking about that.
Isn't this is changing the way that the program work.
This isn't the program though, this is the,
This is the future land, this is how we would map the areas. And I think it reflects how Vermont has developed. You have areas that are traditional core areas that function that way, that serve communities that way, that have developed that way, but are not historic in terms of how you might think of historic. They might be old, but not historic, for example.
just in the interest of time, let's keep going.
Okay. Planned growth areas, line 32 and 33 there, we're simply clarifying that those should surround centers. Because that's actually not in statute. So we're clarifying that those wouldn't be standalone, they would surround centers.
Okay.
And then to the next page, 4 lines 1 through 11. Are just more of the clarifications and references.
This is in the
This is in
planned
the
growth
planned growth
areas section. And are you taking out the new town centers, downtowns and village centers?
Because those are in the centers.
Because those are, okay, and so it's actually, would you say it's confusing that it is also here?
Yes.
Okay,
And in every case, those have been mapped in centers and not in.
right, because those are centers, not,
Exactly.
not the planned growth areas, okay.
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 And then continue on planned growth areas. Lines 13 through 16 are adding clarifications on the housing targets. The planned growth areas are supposed to show areas that are available for development to meet the housing targets. This is clarification that redevelopment counts too. It doesn't have to be currently vacant and rebuilding houses. And then line 17 or 19 through 20. It's bringing that definition to be more consistent with other parts of the definition that are already included.
Sorry, where are you now?
I'm still on page 4.
Yep.
Lines 13 through, lines 17 through 20.
Okay, thank you.
So deleting this language about pedestrian access directly to the center, that's proved very problematic in terms of mapping. Instead, we meeting the goals of complete streets and multimodal access is much more appropriate.
Which is the earlier in the sentence.
Exactly, which is existing.
Okay,
Okay, the village areas.
What's multimodal?
Multimodal is referred to within the smart growth principles. And within complete streets.
Why is complete streets in quotes there?
That's a good question. I don't know, that's existing statute. It's a
Yeah.
defined term. I don't know if,
It's,
I don't.
yeah, it's like we use other defined terms without using quotes.
So-
yeah, it makes me suspicious that that's not a real thing, even though I know it's a real thing, but also,
When you use quotes,
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a good point.
Okay,
Okay,
village areas, moving on to starting at line 23. So village areas are the areas planned for growth around village centers, so like planned growth areas, but smaller scale. And there, we are just proposing some tweaks to clarify here. And then one major deletion on lines 28 to 30. It says that these areas include village center designations. And we're proposing deleting that because those actually are in the centers and not the village areas.
okay,
Okay.
Yep.
Page 5. So, again, we're still in the village areas. Line 1 is simply a term of statutory art, changing municipal to public water.
Mhm.
And then lines 5 through 6 just refer adding reference to housing targets, and just knowing that village areas are an area that the community should be looking to meet the housing targets.
Okay,
Now we're moving on to a new land use area, enterprise areas, and this is, think of those industrial parks, airports, those single use high intensity areas. There's a line in statute we'd like to delete that says they're not adjacent to planned growth areas, because in fact, many of them actually are.
mhm,
Maybe they shouldn't be.
should be next to next.
But they just are. I mean, the reality of them is they take advantage often of the infrastructure that exists. St. Albans Town Industrial Park is a great one, it's integrated, right? Adjacent to it functions well, so.
It's an interesting,
Well, I mean, having them right next to housing. Airports.
yeah, I was just gonna say, let's put a pin in that one, because that one's worth
Yeah.
discussing. Okay, let's keep going.
Okay. So we're moving on to another land use area, the rural conservation area on lines 21 to 24. We are suggesting that you delete the requirement that we show on our maps the tier 3 areas designed by the land use review board for a couple of reasons. One is that It's a regulatory function and our regional plan maps are not regulatory. And the second is that there's, the LURB has the ability to change that at any time through their rulemaking, and so you could have a regional plan that shows this area and then it's actually not accurate. And then we're also proposing deleting reference to the 10 VSA chapter 89, which is the 50 by 50 legislation. Our maps are not regulatory, so we don't really see how they meet that requirement. So our rural conservation areas,
Where are you now?
lines 21 through 24 on page 5.
So. 30 by 30 and 50 by 50 is not regulatory either. So it's.
Right, but it's achieved through a variety of ways. Having something shown in a planning document as something that conservation goals are the highest consideration, I don't think is one of the ways of meeting that.
Interesting, yes.
Is that that paragraph D that you're suggesting?
No,
where
lines
are we?
21 through 24.
Oh, 21 through 24. Okay, I thought that, okay, that was the,
There's a lot in that, those 3 lines.
okay.
So if I can jump in, were you, unless you have more thoughts on that,
Is 10 VSA chapter 89, that's the
50 by
50 by 50, okay.
were you speaking about the last sentence first?
I did.
Okay,
That's
so
why
that
I
would-
missed you up.
Oh,
I'm
that's
sorry.
That's okay, so, and so that last, can you just give me one more time with that last sentence? This is maybe not the place to do that.
Exactly, and I think that we're moving in that direction.
Okay.
Of having that available, especially online,
Yep.
where it can actually be reflective of
Mhm.
the reality.
Well, and like, I guess it leaves the question of like, where is the right place? Who should house that? And one possibility is the land use review board, but future conversation.
Wasn't that the purpose of the term overlay? That it's not part of it's just.
That there is often the assumption that if something is an overlay, it's not officially part of it, but if it's in it, it's in it.
Okay.
And then line 26 through 32, we're proposing deleting this
I
paragraph.
need to hear this, but what if we said as a non-regulatory overlay?
If it's in the requirement for our regional plan, which is what this section is, it's part of our regional plans. And then,
Is an overlay just like transparency of powerful children, territories are.
but it wouldn't necessarily be accurate. We have, our plans are 8-year plans. And so we would be going on the assumption that when we make changes.
Yeah, let's keep going.
Yes, lines 26 through 32. We are simply suggesting deleting all of this because it's already said up above. In other places and in slightly better ways.
Okay, let's.
So you're saying it's the.
It's already done.
Okay.
All right, and then we're moving on to chapter 139, which is the state community investment program.
Mhm.
These proposed changes are in line with the goal of having the definitions be in one place and in the future land use area. So the Community Investment Board section is the designation and incentives program. The boundaries are based on the future land use map boundaries. So we are proposing deleting the extra definition language that's included in this section and instead referring back to the future land use area definitions. That's it in like the big picture of it. And so you can see that right away in number 8, which is talking about the planned growth areas. And lines 5 through 9, where we're proposing to, instead of having lots of different language, just say a planned growth area is what's defined in the future land use area.
Yep, so just making the reference in statute rather than trying to define it a second time.
Slightly different way.
And then, but then, is the reference to designated as a neighborhood, that's an old, is that from the old definitions?
No, that's where the new definitions, the neighborhood is a new designation program.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then sprawl repair. We are making it clear that definition is currently in statute, but it refers to smart growth principles which were inadvertently deleted and we're proposing to add back. Okay, and then the proposed changes on lines 13 through 19 relate to the state designated centers. So under the designation program, once our land use maps are approved by the land use review board, the centers are eligible for designation benefits. This language adjustments would pull that definition back to our future steps and just say it's mapped on a center, approved by the land use review board, it's designated as a center for the state designation program.
So we just have to really think this through because it's a pretty major change from not requiring historic, because the program has always been about historic. So
And it's, and I would say that if you go back to the definition of, I agree with you, it is something to definitely think about. What we're trying to do is pull it back to the definition in the future land use area instead, which includes traditional and historic core areas. So not getting rid of the focus on historic, but just having it said one way in one place in the future land use area definition.
I think I need to spend some time with that, because it's,
Where are you specifically talking about right now? I'm sorry, I think you've lost me.
So I'm on page 6.
Yeah.
Lines 13 through 19. And I think specifically what Senator Von Bart's asking about is on line 15. Where we're proposing deleting a portion of which is eligible for or listed in the National Register of Historic Places.
I think because what I think my confusion is in that, because previously in the planned growth areas, we're referencing the planned growth areas, from the future land use maps. And it would make sense to me to do this, something similar here to reference, anyway, and I was not seeing a reference.
Oh, I see, yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I appreciate the like not trying to define things twice. But if we're not gonna define things twice, then there needs to be a reference.
So simplify that even
Yeah.
further, just add.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
You have testified on this bill before, right? But we haven't seen, you haven't proposed these things before, have you?
We have provided them before, but we haven't walked through it.
Right, okay, because this just seems like a lot
Yeah.
to be changing right now, and I'm not sure of the implications of all of this, and I'm feeling a little uncomfortable.
Well, and we don't have to accept all of it.
No, I understand that, it just, I mean, maybe. It doesn't,
It is a lot.
it's just a lot to, figure out what's going on here.
if the goal here is tweaks and deadline changes to make things work in the next year. It's worth be thinking about, which is major, which is real policy, which is needed.
Sure. Well, and I think it's fair to ask the question, like, what is, especially if we push out the deadlines, what is necessary to do in the next year, for functionality, versus like what could be changed next year.
Well, to answer that question, I will say that we pared this list down quite a lot. We pared this list down quite a lot.
Okay.
To those things that we actually do think are necessary to make it work now, and the reason why is even though you're extending the interim deadline, interim extensions, all of the regional planning commissions are working on our regional plans now and have a December 31st deadline.
Mhm.
And so some of these are actually really, most of them are really important to making that mapping process actually hard.
Mhm.
And these recommendations came from our real life experience doing the mapping and trying to use the statutory language as well as the comments we received from the LERB
Mhm.
in our preliminary reviews.
Okay, well, that's helpful context. Okay, well, and anticipating that our legislative council is going to walk in the door any minute
Okay.
for a different bill, but let's keep going until he arrives.
Okay,
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Baker, go ahead.
Charlie Baker, Executive Director of the Chittenden County RPC. For the record, I just want to also note that we've been really working hard with partners. VNRC's reviewed this, Preservation Trust has reviewed this, the LERB reviewed it and had some edits. So hopefully we've tried to do the background work to make your jobs easier.
Great, okay, thank you, appreciate that. Okay, let's keep going.
okay. So then when you look at on page 6, lines 20 through 23, that's again the statutory reference, which we can adjust, saying that a state designated neighborhood is those village area or planned growth areas. And so we can add statutory reference in there. And then the same for the village area. And there we added a statutory reference for some reason.
Okay.
You can tell this was a process of language changes over time. All right, and then moving on to designation of downtown centers and village centers, line 29. When Act 181 was initially conceived, centers were one thing, not separation of downtown centers and village centers. And so this just clarifies that it's downtown centers and village centers, not just centers. Moving on to page 7. This is a companion to our request to move the community investment board comments up in the process that we talked about earlier.
Sorry, where is that?
On the top of page 7, lines 4 through 6. So we're just saying
Oh, I
that
see. Oh,
they'll
that's-
provide comments to the regional planning commission by the designations.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Lines 8 through 15, again on page 7, is we're proposing deleting this paragraph in its entirety. This is, again, has some future land use definitions that are stated elsewhere already in statute that we don't need to repeat and is slightly different.
You're on line 8.
Line 8 through 15.
We will pause. This is not a definition, this is an exclusion. So this is deleting an exclusion.
It's deleting an exclusion, but the exclusion is excluding the things we already can't do because of the definitions earlier in statute.
I guess this is one of those things where I'm wanting to make sure that that's actually what this is doing. Not that I don't believe you. It's not that I don't trust you. It's just that that's like very confused about what.
I know, we're proposing deleting an exclusion.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is it's the same thing we're proposing deleting on page 5 because it's repeated twice in statute.
Yes, and recognize that we didn't get quite through all of this.
So the rest is, I'll just say, restoring the smart growth principles that we deleted. So,
Okay, very good. Okay, amazing. Thank you. Okay, I would love to take at least a 2-minute break. Just to reset our brains as we transition to the next bill. Which is 224. Okay. Yeah. There's a lot.
We are. Sorry,
Oh my
God, they're proposing, this actually makes our life easier. We're being put in a awkward position right now, and we have to weigh in on what implicates land use decisions, but really we wanna make our decision based on the benefits. We like actually bifurcating those two things, they move forward.
It's one guy. Here's question.
Okay, all right. Thank you. This is Senate Natural Resources and Energy coming back from a very short break. We have a new draft of S 224. The Lakes Miscellaneous Bill, which I might refer to as the Lake Monster Bill. But we have a very small change, well, a couple of relatively small changes. Just a little bit of context for this. So the last time we talked about this with the fishing tournaments, we ended up chatting about some language that would have conditioned fishing tournament permits on the source protection plan provisions. And over the break, had lots of discussions, well, maybe lots, some discussions with folks from DEC about that. And there was a little bit, I would guess I would classify it as a little bit problematic because the source protection plans don't have, I guess, maybe it'd be fair to say, like the force of law behind them, they're management tools. And so I, just to move this bill forward, I went ahead and made an executive decision to, instead of having it reference the source protection plans, to require that, for drinking water sources, where there's a fishing tournament, that they consult with DEC, or they consult with the, drinking water division, and that DEC then has the authority to add conditions to the fishing tournament permits, which in my mind was sort of getting at the same idea, but with hopefully in a slightly less problematic way. So that's where we're at. And there was a couple other changes that we had talked about that are reflected here. So with that context, let's dive in.
Okay, this is my grade of state council. You can turn to page 24 of the draft number 8.2 for the March 10th date and the 7:47 a.m. timestamp. The first G is in that notice for affirmation of notice to municipalities when an applicant for a permit be held with fewer than 5 inland lakes, that you want them to affirm on the application form that the legislative bodies and of the municipalities in which the tournament is proposed have been notified
Similarly, page 25, line 9, when the tournament proposes to be held on 5 or more inland lakes, then the department posts lyrics of the tournament on the department's website. And then on page 25, line 14 is the language that the chair was referencing. If an application for a fishing tournament permit proposes a fishing tournament on an inland lake that serves as a source for a public water system, the Department of Fish and Wildlife shall consult with the Drinking Water and Groundwater Division of DEC prior to issuance of a permit for the tournament. The division may require any fishing tournament permit issued for an inland lake that serves as a source of a public water system to include conditions, requirements, or limits that shall be included within the fishing permits, or that will prohibit fishing of the fishing permit by the Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Okay. Thoughts? Questions, comments? Senator Bogarts?
No.
Sorry. Okay. Are you okay with it?
I don't know, I sure.
Okay. Okay, since we have Mr. Redmond here from the Division of Drinking Water, anything you want to comment on about this language? If not, that's fine, but.
Sure, I could say, for the record, Brian Redmond, Director for the Drinking Water and Groundwater Protection Division within DEC. So I think the language on the shall consult with Fish and Wildlife is acceptable to both departments. We've discussed that, and we think that's a nice connection point for us to understand the proposal and for us to consult on the specifics of the tournament. So we're supportive of that required consultation, and what that would look like on the ground we would be coordinating with Fish and Wildlife to just better understand the specifics of the fishing tournament, and if there was a need to put in protective measures around the water supply, that consultation would occur and we would work out it. I would suggest that because it's Fish and Wildlife's permit, you may want to hear from them. But I think generally supportive of that idea of consultation and working together on a plan to mitigate any potential issues with public drinking water system.
Thank you. Yes.
Doesn't work for me.
Okay.
I'll tell you why, because I've applied through Fish and Wildlife for permits before.
Yeah.
And it may take you 2 weeks to get it. Now, if you gotta have conditions that are gonna further, limit the amount of time, you only got so much time for us. And if somebody doesn't respond in an immediate fashion, that could just make it so we can't have it.
Can I ask Mr. Redmond, do you have a sense of how long the turnaround time might be?
It's a busy division doing a lot of different work, so it's a matter of prioritization. It's a good point. It depends as who's there at that time and who's making the prioritization for the review. I think in general, we view this as a lower risk activity. And I don't expect much in the way of specific conditions. There are a few around the intake itself that could come up, but in general, based on my understanding of these tournaments, generally low risk. So I think the review and the consultation could be quick, but that just all depends on what's coming in and is there. It is a very fair point.
Yes.
So, I mean, isn't there any way that we could have those conditions for each inland body of water that is drinking supply done in advance? If you gotta wait until they apply for the permit, if you know the areas they won't be able to, if you wanna keep them away from a certain area, that could already be prearranged condition. So I'm saying, if it's an inlet area for a drinking supply, you could have some signage that says no fishing, within 200 feet or whatever. That's all I'm saying is, we created a problem that could be taken care of in advance with some planning. That, it may be just a problem at first, but maybe after, if it's Orange County Fish and Game Club
puts this on and it affects this body of water. The first time, they'll work with you, I'm sure they will.
I think, possibly, it seems like a reasonable thing that we could figure out, the work has not been done. But it does seem reasonable that we could identify what types of protective measures should be considered broadly. That seems achievable.
Two questions or two comments. I mean, wouldn't that information actually ironically be in the source protection plan?
Right. Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know that, I understand that's not a regulatory document, but it might already be in that. And would it as a sort of interim compromise, if we put a date, like they must respond within a certain number of like. I hesitate to say a time without consulting with Brian, but like 72 hours or something like that, they have to do it in or something.
Yeah, it'd be their responsibility to apply in plenty of time, but they're also watching the weather now. You know?
No, I understand, but I'm
So-
talking about them responding within 72 hours, so, and if they don't respond, then it is automatically approved. Or something like that,
Or DZ doesn't get to wait.
or, yeah, their conditions aren't there, yeah. Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm just on the last sentence, I just think I'm just kind of being a little. Maybe I'm just a little slow coming off the crossover week, but.
I hear you.
Are we, is this, Michael, is this sentence saying here that the drinking water and groundwater division could deny a fishing permit?
Well, and this might be a better question for Brian, but there are some source protection area conditions that said human activity isn't allowed within the source protection area. So if there's a basis for that, wouldn't you want that to be a limit or a prohibition?
I would, yeah, I would, and that's where I just, maybe it's just how I'm reading this, but. Are we trying to say that the drinking water and groundwater division may place limits on fishing tournaments?
Yes.
And, but we're not trying to say that, if. I mean, we're not, are we trying to say that they can place limits, but as long as the limits are followed, that they can have the tournament? They're not just giving them a carte blanche to say you can't have the tournament.
No, I mean, it could be conditions like stay
away from
200 feet
yeah.
from the intake source. Or don't fish in this area because of erosion that could affect the intake. Don't use oil or gas outwards. I mean, those are the types of conditions that potentially.
We got a whole year before the next fishing day, so, you know.
Well, the next ice fishing.
Ice fishing, right.
So it could be conditions that, like what Michael just said, but it could be also a no, like the.
Right, there's no human activity,
No
so
human
therefore
activity,
no.
so. But are you concerned that that's having DEC allow that, or what?
I think what's really confusing me is that everything after you, and everything after permit on page 26.
There's two permits in page 26. So.
Then where where it's highlighted, yeah.
So. The limit shall be included within the fishing permit. Or that would prohibit, I see what you're saying, you basically wanna say. To include, you could say include conditions, requirements, limits, or prohibitions. That shall be included within the fishing tournament permit, period.
Okay, I think that's what's kind of hanging me up.
Okay.
Is that last part I don't, yeah.
So were you okay with the language that,
Yeah, I think something like that would work, yeah.
okay,
And those conditions, once they're set, would be the same for the next year. unless.
Well,
something-
maybe unless something changes, you know, in the water.
That's what I'm saying, if it's not a problem, yeah.
Right.
And it could be different in ice for ice machine versus
Mhm.
non-ice machine.
Well, like I was told, a lot of municipalities don't want you to know what the intake is for the right. So they don't put signs there. So
That's fine.
if it,
That's some water
if
there.
the sign will take care of the problem and make it
Yeah.
illegal to do that, whatever that sign says you can't. Then. Put the
So-
sign up.
So we are slightly over time. I think we're not gonna vote on this today. Which is fine.
So
It's okay. So small change. And then we'll get you on the schedule and hopefully we'll have a vote.
Policy house study for.
You did amazing. You're so ahead of it. It's so good.
That was guesswork.
Okay.
Does anyone else smell gas in here?
Sometimes.
Or some kind of fuel smell,
There's like a little bit like that.
or
Yeah,
exhaust
pictures of it.
smell, maybe it's exhaust.
Are we not even?
I don't know.
Okay, but
I thought